All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's the 21 off season. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. We are 2 days away from the NFL draft, and I'm sure most of you are absolutely drunk on mock drafts and highlight videos and all just kind of knee deep in everything. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you're doing well today. This is going to be more of a sloppy video, just kind of a laid back video. I don't do a whole lot of NFL draft work for two reasons. Number one is that there's so many people out there doing it. And while not all of them are right, most of them are interesting and entertaining, and they put out a lot of work for all of us to look at and enjoy. Even if we don't agree with them, it's just fun to look at all the different mock drafts, right? And the other reason is that in order to really do it right, you have to invest a lot of time, a ton of time, into looking at these guys and trying to figure out how they project onto the next level. And I just don't have that kind of time to invest. Usually if I get on here and I talk about something, I've put a lot of time and thought into it and a lot of work. That doesn't always make me right, but at least I've got some kind of informed opinion. Just don't have that kind of time for the NFL draft, so that's why I wanted to get the wish list from you guys and just kind of get a good happy feel for what you kind of wanted headed in. These are the 6 of you who had comments on up until tonight. Some of you post after tonight's video, I'm sorry, but Don, Saul, Salink, John, Lego, Bryce, I'll go through each of your picks here in just a minute. Thank you, Brett and Andy, for absolutely blowing up my video because you traded for the #1 thing on the wish list. Offensive tackle, and specifically left tackle, was by far the thing that got the most votes on everybody's draft wish list. And of course, Kansas City picks out Orlando Brown on a trade. And I'm not going to comment on that trade. We'll do a whole separate video on that trade. We'll talk about that deal here in a couple of weeks. But the one thing I will say about that is it did fill your biggest need. Whether you looked at websites and the media, or whether you looked at the fans and the comments and the ones that we got, or my own personal wish list, offensive line was the biggest need, tackle specifically, and specifically left tackle. Could you have gone through the season with the guys that you had and maybe kind of sort of figured it out? Yeah, you could have, but nobody was there who's going to be the permanent guy at left tackle. So this makes a lot of people feel a whole lot better about 2021 and beyond because you've got Orlando Brown filling out that need. So a lot of you, I think all of you actually picked out left tackle or tackle in general here. And Kansas City already filled out that need. So they kind of messed up our whole video here, but who cares? We'll go through all of this anyway. And I'm sure most of you would rather have had the tackle than to have the streamlined video. After that, the big wide receiver, the wide receiver X, depending on how you want to phrase that. Some teams don't have a big wide receiver. They just have your wide receiver X. Other teams actually have the big one. It was interesting to me. We'll go through it here in a second. But a lot of you picked up on this big wide receiver. More so than just a general wide receiver X, not just another guy out there, but specifically a certain kind of wide receiver. We'll get to that in a second. After that, wide receiver was by far the number 2 on the wish list. Linebacker was significantly checking in at number 3, and then center and defensive end after that. All right, let's go through the list of guys here. Don, I think he commented first. That's the order in which I got the comments. Don had left tackle already filled, wide receiver, and offensive line. Don, thank you for dropping in. I appreciate you. Don's been listening for a very long time now. I don't know how long, but thank you, Don, very much for coming in. Left tackle, wide receiver, offensive line. Kind of picking up on that theme of just investing more draft picks into the offensive line. And again, you know, even now with Orlando Brown, there's only 4 guys on Kansas City's roster who will be on the roster or who have contracted to be on the roster in 2022. So you either got to start re-signing a bunch of these guys, or you got to kind of address that in the draft. Don't be surprised. I'll say this more than once. Don't be surprised if Kansas City doesn't come back with another offensive tackle. Thank you, Don. Saul comes in with defensive end Jalen Phillips, right tackle Tevin Jenkins. The thing that I thought was interesting from Saul was Terrace Marshall out of LSU. Now, I like Marshall's wide receiver specifically, but what I really like, and we'll see this later, was that Terrace Marshall is 6'3". He's a big wide receiver. He has the speed, but he's also a big, taller wide receiver. Sammy Watkins went somewhere around 6'1". Kansas City really has not featured a true big wide receiver in quite a while. And truthfully, a lot of NFL teams don't. There's a lot of NFL teams who do not. They're so caught up in speed. And even more so, even more so after Kansas City's run here over the past 3 seasons, they're just enthralled with speed. Really, NFL teams should be enthralled with anything that gives them a mismatch. And I really, really like the idea of Kansas City having not just another good wide receiver out there, which is fine, but an actual big wide receiver out there, even if he's not as fast. It just adds something else, a variant for NFL defenses to cover, and they've already got their hands full. You've got the running back position covered. You've got speed out of the backfield. You have pass catching ability out of the backfield. You've got speed all over the wide receiver slots with Hill and with Robinson. You've got speed at tight end with Kelsey. You've got talent. You have guys who can catch the football. You have actual Hall of Fame athleticism out there, guys who are making a run for the Hall of Fame out there for Kansas City. And then you drop in a big wide receiver on them or a second tight end. When you do that, when you drop these guys in, and I don't think they're going to go tight end in the draft because I just don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's there this year. But when you drop in somebody who's also big, now NFL defenses they're just going to give up some weeks, okay, because they have more and more to cover. You're trying to figure out how to cover these fast little guys, and you're trying to figure out how to bracket Kelsey, you're trying to figure out how to bracket Hill, and you're trying to figure out who the heck's going to guard that running back coming out of the backfield. And oh, by the way, here's somebody over here, a wide receiver who's 6'3" or 6'5", and even though he may not be fast enough to create mismatches, he's tall enough to catch the ball over any of the cornerbacks that we've got or any of the safeties that we've got. So it just adds another thing, and that's what I specifically like about Terrace Marshall. And oh, by the way, he's an excellent athlete too, like most of the LSU people are. So Saul, thank you for bringing that in. Salink, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Salink. Let me know if I'm not. Salink comes in with left tackle, linebacker, and X wide receiver. What Salink really picked up on here, and this is where I'll go with this again, was Stone Forsythe, a huge left tackle, 6'7", 330, something like that. And I think Bryce also picked up on that as well, coming out of Florida. He's kind of somewhere in those middle rounds, 3 to 5. So don't be surprised whether they go with Forsythe or not. But don't be surprised if Kansas City doesn't dip back into this draft, force some offensive linemen, just to kind of stockpile for the next couple of years and to kind of catch up on maybe drafts that they haven't done that at all. But specifically Stone Forsythe I like just because he's a huge mountain of a man. You like the size in there. If you can teach them to play at the NFL level, you just love that size right there. And he would be perfect to bring in for Kansas City kind of as a project. Don't think he'd even play this year. But somebody like Stone Forsythe out of Florida, if you got him kind of waiting in the wings for 2022 and beyond, that's something I absolutely love because at some point, Remmers, even though we like Remmers possibly there at that right tackle spot, Remmers is going to get old. And if Wiley isn't able to slide over to tackle and he's kicked back to the inside or he's just not around next year because of finances, then you really like the idea of having somebody like Stone Forsythe there to kind of battle with Lucas Niang there at the right tackle spot. So I really like that as well. Salink, thank you for coming in. John put in a whole paragraph. Really, John, a lot of the things that he put there, appreciate it. Kind of a lot along my lines of thinking as well. Double down on the offensive line, but also targeting some of the extra salaries and trying to draft behind some of the big salaries. Sorry, John came in at big wide receiver again. Like that is it's not just another good wide receiver. It's the idea of creating a mismatch through the height. And then he doubled down on the left tackle spots, both there with the offensive line. Lego My Ego, thank you for coming in. Lego My Ego put together a huge synopsis. And I'm going to say this for everybody, but I'll start with Lego My Ego. Lego My Ego, you put in so much detail. I absolutely love it. If maybe next year before the draft, you want to do a whole special show with us, we'll settle down and do a whole show on Kansas City Chiefs and what all they might look at. If you like doing that kind of detail, that offer is open to anybody. I can either come to the Kansas City area for a day or two. I kind of intend to do that anyway at some point and meet some of you guys. Or we can set up some kind of a Skype thing or a FaceTime thing and do something that way and try to figure out a way to just do a show. Some of you guys, and I'm talking to Lego My Ego specifically, but all of you in general, if you like putting in that kind of detail and that interests you, let me know, and maybe we'll do something like that. But Lego My Ego put together a whole synopsis here, but he had top 3 wish list. offensive tackle, specifically Jalen Mayfield and Cosme, I think, out of Texas. The interesting thing I liked to hear Lego out of yours was Straken, Michael Straken, Mike Strakan. I don't know which way you pronounce that. But coming out of Charleston, 6'5", 225, a big wide receiver. This is in the later rounds, rounds 5 to 6. And again, I really like that just because of the height and size mismatches that it represents. You know, most CBs, even what we consider big CBs, they're kind of topping out around 6'1". And, you know, if you're already having to bracket Kelsey and you're already bracketing Hill, that leaves one-on-one battles with the running back, and that creates speed mismatches, but it creates one-on-one battles with a big wide receiver. And if that guy's 6'5", going up against 6'1", and he has nobody else to worry about, it just creates another mismatch. So I really like that coming out of Charleston there in the later rounds. He'd be battling for a roster spot coming out of rounds 5 or 6, of course, but I definitely love that. Thank you, Lego. And then Bryce comes in. Bryce actually had, before the Orlando Brown trade, of course, Bryce actually had my exact top 3 wish list for this draft, which was linebacker, center, and tackle. And specifically, he had Zavin Collins. I like Zavin Collins out of Tulsa. Collins is a very athletic guy. Matter of fact, somebody else had him too. Salink had him as well. I like Zavin Collins coming out of Tulsa if he's available there at the spot you're picking, and I think that he probably will be. Don't know for sure. Depends on who else likes him. Like his athleticism. The problem with linebacker, and this is, I would love to see Kansas City come out of this draft with another excellent prospect at linebacker. You never know until you get them on the football field. My preference would be somebody at linebacker who's an excellent athlete, who is at least decent in pass coverage, decent in the running game, but is also, more specifically, so athletic and fast that they don't mind getting after the quarterback. It's amazing. You go back 15 years to almost any other generation of football, you could not get on the football field unless you enjoyed, as a linebacker, unless you enjoyed getting after the quarterback. There just weren't too many linebackers who, if you didn't get after the quarterback, were going to be able to play a whole lot. If you didn't get after the quarterback, you had better be a monster in the running game, right? And that you didn't worry a whole lot about your linebackers being good at pass coverage. Well, all of that has changed over the past 10 years. Really, this is a very modern thing, that your linebackers, the first thing you start to ask is, can they cover in pass coverage? And if not, do we even want them on the football field? That's what a lot of NFL teams have done to the linebacker spot. But you've got Willie Gay there, who I think is good in pass coverage and excellent against the run. And you've got several guys there who can cover in the secondary. And so I really like the idea of Kansas City coming in with somebody who's not, inept in pass coverage, but who really does have the ability to get after the quarterback out of that middle inside linebacker spot. So you can do stunts, twists, dogs, all kinds of things like that with that linebacker spot, which a lot of NFL teams don't do at linebacker. So I would really like to see Kansas City do that. Now, Zavin Collins, I think, is the kind of guy who can do that from Tulsa, and a couple of you guys already picked up on that. I really like that. If they don't go with Zach Collins, then maybe switch back to somebody like Nick Bolton out of Missouri, who I also like. Was a very different linebacker. Bolton really is a pass coverage guy, and excellent from what we've seen, an excellent pass coverage kind of a linebacker. So if you can't get Zavin Collins out of Tulsa, then I really like Nick Bolton out of Missouri, although I like the Tulsa guy first. So Bryce, thank you for that. And then Bryce also had center. I would love, and this is back to my own personal wish list now, linebacker and center for me are the 2 spots. If you get a big wide receiver late in the draft, then I'm going to feel great about that. If you get Terrace Marshall, okay, I think you've upgraded your talent base. But if I forget the names, then I'm just going after position. I want center and I want linebacker. I really want them to be able to come away with somebody. And again, it may not be somebody who plays this year. It might be, and I've got a couple of guys here, Josh Myers, rounds 4 to 6 out of Ohio State. I think, he's a later round kind of a guy, but this is the kind of guy who's big enough, strong enough, it looks consistent enough to where he could play center in the NFL and do that at a reasonable level. May not ever be an all-pro kind of a guy or even a Pro Bowler, but if you can just lock down that starting center spot, not in 2021, but maybe in 22 and 23 and 24, I'd feel great about that. I would feel absolutely ecstatic about that. So I would love to see Kansas City come away from this draft with some kind of a reasonable prospect at center. not necessarily some ragged prospect that they're just going to kind of stick back there as the backup center, and if it works out, great. I would love to see them come away with somebody, whether it's the second round or the fourth round, who's a good, solid prospect at center. I would really feel great about that. That's number one on my wish list, a 1A, along with linebacker. I would love to see them pick up the linebacker spot. And I get it. Kansas City has never focused on linebacker. It's not a huge thing for them. It's not a huge thing for a lot of NFL teams. But if you're looking for reasons, and I talked about this before, if you're looking for reasons why Kansas City's defense isn't better, why it's not pushing up toward the elite, then you start looking at your weak spots. And the weakest spot by far is linebacker. Now, do they have a top edge rusher? They really don't. But the weakest spot, the weakest position group by far is linebacker. Even if they only play two most of the time, and they do, they usually only play two. I think Willie Gay probably fills out one of those spots. I would love to see Kansas City come out with another good, solid linebacker here, whether that's the Tulsa guy with Collins, or whether that's the I'm losing it, the Bolton guy from Missouri. I would love to see them come out with a good, not just an average guy, but a good, solid linebacker prospect here as well. So it's going to be tackle, center, and linebacker. Now it's center and linebacker, and then tacking on a big wide receiver, somebody with some height, maybe like the guy out of Charleston. All right, that's a lot. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Hope you enjoy the draft. Hope you celebrate the entire weekend and just get to watch it and soak it in. Kansas City still got several good draft picks, even after that trade. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about the Orlando Brown trade. We'll talk about some other things as well. Thank you. Bye.